I'm joined in the studio now by Guney Yildiz, a visiting fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thanks very much for coming in to speak to us. So if we start with some of the latest diplomatic developments, what has prompted the French offer of mediation now?
Well, France, President Macron is defining his presidency also in foreign policy terms, and he's bringing in a very strong presidency, as opposed to, we can say actually that France is the most pivotal country in Europe when it comes to Syrian crisis. But also what is happening in Syria, in northern Syria especially, is a national security issue for France. I've been in contact with French foreign ministry officials in the last couple of months, and they were saying that most attacks took place in France, actually planned in Al-Bab or Raqqa or Manbij, these areas where we're now talking about as the tension grows.
But the problem is that France has expressed a sense of wholehearted support for the Syrian Kurds, and from the Turkish viewpoint, that really compromises their ability to be an impartial negotiator now.
Well, actually, Europe broadly is more has a relative neutrality on this issue. Neither US nor Russia has that neutrality anymore. France was the only power who was able to speak to all members of the Astana coalition, Turkey, Russia and Iran. Now they're adding Syrian Democratic Forces, the main US ally on the ground, to this equation. And I think they're expecting that this will make them more powerful diplomatically. Yes, Turkey will protest, but I don't think Turkey is in a position to risk losing France as well as some other of their allies.
But, I mean, the key point is that France at the moment isn't a very powerful player in all of this. If you look at the dynamics that are unfolding in northern Syria, it would seem as though there is this kind of tacit cooperation between the Russians and the Turks because their key strategic aim is to contain the Syrian Kurds, and for the Russians, well, it brings them Turkish support for the Astana track.
It brings Turkish support for Astana track, but also what Russia is trying to do is to weaken the Western coalition in Syria. So weakening the Syrian, the US partner on the ground, the SDF, is actually working well with Russia. So how France is acting is not necessarily, it's not acting alone. It's acting against the backdrop of US-Russian conflict on Syria, where Russia wants to enlist Turkish support to weaken a US ally on the ground, and France is putting its weight towards preventing that, because initially they were expecting Turkish troops will stop in Afrin, but it didn't happen.
Well, so then let me ask you about the US. We had another interesting day of comments from President Trump. He was saying that the US would leave Syria very soon. Where would that potentially leave the SDF? They would be very exposed if we were to see a US withdrawal.
They will be extremely exposed because what we have seen in Afrin, in northwestern Syria, is that Turkey relied extremely heavily on air power, artillery and drones, against which Syrian Democratic Forces or the YPG, Kurdish-led YPG, has no defense against. So if the US does that, that will be a huge blow against Kurdish-led troops in northern Syria. But, I mean, what President Trump said will happen really very soon, as he mentioned, or we will see the Pentagon line, which expresses more of a commitment to Syrian Democratic Forces on the ground. Whether that will prevail, we will have to wait and see.
Guney Yildiz from the European Council on Foreign Relations, thank you very much.